What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It for a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now.
Welcome back to another episode of the Do It for a Living podcast. I'm Kevin Dubois. Before I get started this week, I wanted to invite any of our listeners who might own a shop or run a shop or know somebody who does own a shop to join our Do It for a Living community on Facebook. It's a great place for owners to kind of share information and help each other out. We do vet everybody, so when you do click the join button, make sure you answer the questions because I try to keep all the bots out of there, and it helps make the content better if it's not people who are just spamming us with junk. So fill those questions out, join it, invite your friends that do own shops or run shops, and make yourself known that you're in this group so we can kind of share some more information. And so with that, I want to get started with the episode this week. Okay, my guest today is Adam Hammer of Hammer and Dolly Restorations. Adam has been a customer of my Shop Assist for a while, and that's kind of how I've met him and kind of talked with him and kind of learned how he does things. And his operation is quite organized and has worked extremely well for him. And I really wanted to pick his brain about how it all works. And so he's with us here to share his story. So Adam, how are you doing today?
Great, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
So, Adam, let's go ahead and get started first with tell us about yourself. Like, how did you get involved with cars? Any history, like education, training, anything like that?
Sure, yeah. Well, I think like any car guy, grows up playing with, Matchbox cars or Legos or, working with their dad in the garage. And I did all of those things. I had go-karts and mini bikes, and, we were always fixing them. And then about the time that I was, ready to start turning wrenches, my dad was teaching me how in the garage on the family vehicles, mostly out of necessity. And then, that love of working with your hands grew from there to the point where I went to McPherson College in McPherson, Kansas for automotive restoration. And it was there that I was really able to grab onto that that desire to work with my hands, but then also have the art and the craft combined to where now the work that I do it's appreciated by a lot of people, and it's just a level of artistry that you don't see very often with classic cars.
So there's a college for it specifically?
Yeah, McPherson College is the only school in the country that offers a 4-year bachelor's degree program in automotive restoration.
That's amazing. I had no idea until just now. I always just assumed it was part of like tech schools, just kind of teach you classes here and there, and then you just kind of learn, like by doing. But
well, yeah, that is one way to do it, and that's certainly kind of the school of hard knocks in a way. Because you can only really learn so much when you're working on one project at a time.
Yeah.
But I think what I liked about McPherson was that, I had a semester of every different type of class. So woodworking, upholstery, paint and body, machining, engine work, transmission work, drivetrain, chassis, and then even took some time and worked in the foundry there too. So I've done some, metal castings and all kinds of
parts.
Yeah. So it's a pretty broad spectrum curriculum that they have there, and I don't think you could really gain that type of depth of education anywhere else in 4 years. Certainly not if you just went out and worked at a shop, and even a trade school or something like that. Just, they don't have that kind of capacity. So
sure.
There was obviously more to learn. I didn't graduate an expert, but I graduated, with a wide vision of the things that were possible and what I could do.
Exactly. That's something that like a lot of people struggle with, running a business is you don't know what you don't know. And people mock college for like teaching you a lot of weird stuff that you may not ever use. But what that does is it does give you a little bit of insight into a lot of things. You're not an expert in anything, but you're knowledgeable enough to do a lot of stuff, and I think that's the same thing with my engineering degree is I don't use hardly any of the stuff I learned in college regularly, but I know how to tackle problems that, I might not normally have understood how to do, but I have learned it in college and I can go back and redo that. I can revisit it. I know what to do. I know how to accomplish the problem. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, shocking to me is you have a degree in automotive registration. That's really awesome. Did you start the business straight out of college, or did you just kind of like work for somebody? How'd that work out?
I graduated school and I went to work in Ohio at a Rolls-Royce restoration shop. They specialize in Rolls-Royce Ghosts, and at that shop I was a fabricator. So we built everything from scratch if needed. I think one of the cars that the shop worked on was actually built based off of an engine block. So they had nothing else. So I learned a lot. Some of the owner was a former IndyCar and racing chief mechanic or crew chief, and a couple of his managers also came from that sport or that racing background. So they had a lot of really cool insight in how to build things and make things and do stuff quickly too. So I learned a lot there as a fabricator. And then I went on to work for a private collector. And then from there, I moved up to Traverse City here and I did a little bit of side work and for some body shops. And I soon saw that there was a need in the region for somebody who had my type of education.
Okay.
So it was sort of then and there, I didn't want to do body work in a normal body shop, but every body shop at the time had like their own project car in the corner that needed to get done. Right. And so I'd come knocking on the door and say, hey, I see you got that, that old car there. You need any help with it? And they go, yeah. So I was doing some 1099 work for a little while. And just kind of feeling things out. And then it was within 6 months or a year that I decided it was probably better that I just go full time and start it off.
What time frame was this?
I moved to Traverse City in August of 2011, and I was I considered myself self-employed by March of 2012.
Okay, so pretty quickly then. And I mean, one thing that is like, it's pretty obvious probably to everybody in this industry is general body repair and what you do are almost completely different, right?
Yeah, there's a different mindset to your typical body shop technician versus a restoration technician. And a lot of people will say, well, I just had my car restored and it means that they got they got a fresh paint job. But at my level of restoration, it's, we took the whole car apart and every single nut and bolt and, every component of the vehicle has been rebuilt and remanufactured if needed. So it's sort of a no stone left unturned type mentality. And we don't glaze over, the details. So my expectation is when we're done with a project, it's got a whole second life to live.
Yeah.
With just little bits of maintenance and this or that here and there. And I compare it to, buying a roof on your house. Would you buy a 5-year roof or do you want that 20 to 30-year roof? And most people say they want the 20 to 30-year roof. So that's the level of what we're going for.
Okay. And we'll go we'll go deep into how you run these projects here later in the show here, but I want to keep continuing on with your personal background here. But, So you start your own business around 2012. How did you kind of grow it then? Like, if you did you just keep reaching out to all those other shops in your area and kind of take their like large projects that they weren't able to like get to or get around to?
I think there were one or two shops that were definitely interested in not doing that kind of restoration work anymore. So they kind of passed my name along. I didn't really start out doing much body work. It was mostly mechanical work.
Okay.
So I had a toolbox and a bench and, some knowledge. And so I just sort of started doing wrenching and solving simple problems on classic cars. I mean, it was, we've gotten to the point now where most mechanic shops don't want to tune a carburetor or don't have an technician to rebuild a carburetor. And so, simple things like that fell on me to figure out and do. And I think, once I had the theory behind it all, I was able to just grow it. And then word of mouth really is really my biggest sales tool.
Okay. And are you married? Do you have any kids or anything like that?
I was married, but it didn't pan out for the long haul. So currently single, and just got a great dog.
Okay, so then time spent in the shop is not really an issue for you. You can work whatever is needed or work as little as you want.
Yeah, I mean there's a balance there too, right? Because I think everybody who's self-employed, to get the business off the ground, you do everything you have to do to make it happen. It's 7 days a week at 10, 12, 14 hours a day, whatever it is, it's got to get done.
Yep.
And then eventually, you probably would experience some level of burnout. So I would say, I don't work those hours that I used to anymore. I can, but it's, you gotta find your own level of balance,
Exactly.
so that you can still be a human and come to work and stay refreshed.
For sure. Yeah, and I have planned after my kids. So yeah, my evening today is after this. I got a kids school play, and then after that we have all the shop people. We're gonna have game night, so cards and pizza.
Oh, awesome! That's
at
great.
the shop. Yeah. So yeah, that's exactly it, right? Like, so you got to have a little balance, and you got to make sure that you take care of your people as well. So yeah, that's all things you kind of learn on the fly, and I think you're exactly right. Burnout is a big problem in this industry because most people don't make enough money to not work those hours, and that's all part of the business plan and planning how you charging things and all that sort of stuff as far as like running the business goes. Just people don't think about it, and I think you have thought about it, and I think that has made you successful and where you can just kind of do what is needed now. So okay, so tell us about the business where you sit now. Like, how big is the building?
Well, I've got two buildings on my property. One is 10,500 square feet, and the other one's 5,000. The 10.5 is the one that we work out of. We do pretty much all of our work, but then the 5,000 is like an overflow building for projects coming in or going out. And then I do a little bit of storage in the winter. So I have some clients that store there for 6 or 7 months out of the year, and then they'll come pick them up in the spring and use them all summer, and then come back in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you own those buildings?
Yeah, I've been the landlord for the last 4 years now.
Awesome.
So 21.
Congrats on that. Congrats on that.
Thanks. Yeah. It was great to know once I bought the buildings that I could kind of settle in, and I didn't have somebody else dictating my space.
Sure. Or telling you when your rent is going to go up or whatever, Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Now I just do it on a whim.
Cool. So how many employees do you have?
I've got 10 total. So one, or myself plus 9. I've got a parts and project manager, and then 4 mechanics, and I have 4, I'll say, body guys or guys that do body work and assembly work, things like that. So one of them's an intern.
Okay. And then how many, I mean, it's 10,000 square feet. How many bays do you kind of break that up in? Is it like lifts, or are you kind of getting like a work area? How do you kind of handle that?
Yeah, I've got 3 2-post lifts, one mid-rise lift. I've got one drive-on lift. So that's 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I would say in all, we probably have about comfortably 12 bays in the shop. But there's some extra flex space in there as well. So,
Okay.
you know, I don't like to see it, but if we have to pack them in, I think we can get in about 18.
Okay. And then you can fit a lot of cars in the extra storage as well.
Yeah, the extra 5,000 will probably put in about 35 or 40 cars.
And do you actually fill that in the winter?
We take in about 25 cars for storage.
Okay.
And then we have about 10-ish that we'll take in for like overflow,
Okay.
for work that we're doing. But the nice thing is with the storage cars is that they also require work. So we'll rotate them through in the winter. And then in the springtime, they're, set up and ready to go.
Yeah. So you do like maintenance on them and whatever, like basic stuff that they need when they're sitting there, right?
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. Okay, so kind of break us down your revenue. It sounds like obviously most of this is going to be restoration, but I mean, is there a lot involved in parts? Are you doing any web sales? Kind of break us down your revenue.
Yeah, I mean, the revenue is all labor and parts that are sold because of the labor that's required.
Yep.
I don't do anything, as far as outside part sales.
Okay.
I don't stock any parts, although that is a division of the business that I've considered. Potentially, if I've had to make or fabricate one part, then I'm sure there's somebody else out there that might want more.
Uh-huh.
And so, but I haven't tapped into that just because that's like a whole nother level of marketing and,
Sure.
web service that I just, I don't have time for as it is.
Okay. And do you ever, I know a lot of restoration shops put their own cars together and sell them. You do any of that sort of stuff?
I haven't done any of that. I've entertained it, but, I also know there's for me, there's a level of, integrity or my name that goes behind that project.
Okay.
And I want to, if I'm going to sell a certain level of quality to a client, then I should also be doing that to any car that I may own and try to sell.
Okay.
And for that reason, most of those cars that are at that level, I can't afford.
Yeah.
That's just, when you're talking about a job that's $200,000 or $300,000 or even more, for a complete restoration, then that's really, you have to pick a car that's worth that much.
Sure.
Or, way more than that. And again, that's out of my league.
Yeah, and I guess you're probably also right in that the time and money spent to restoring a car is often above and beyond what the car's worth, even after it's restored, right? There's a lot of sentimental value in the people that paying to do that.
Yeah, that's typical of most of the clients that bring a car to me. There are, occasional instances where a car's, it's worth putting some money into, or they've owned it for so long that, they never thought that their $5,000 car that they bought used in the 70s would be eventually worth, $300,000. So they're just happy to spend the money. So,
Sure.
But it's, I think, I don't like to talk about the economics of classic cars because I think of it more as a hobby.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, out of the hobby grew this gigantic industry that people love.
Yeah.
And there are people like me that are making a living off of it, and I'm thankful for it.
And you are able to provide your employees as well. So you have 10 guys you said working for you. Do you offer benefits? Like what kind of like, I mean, I'm not going to ask what you pay them, but like, do you have like
Sure.
high turnover? Or are you able to keep them a while because you do compensate them well?
I've had high turnover in the past. I've done a lot more work since COVID in trying to keep the employees. I feel like the people that I have now are the ones that are going to stick around. For the most part, they're
Yep.
going to stick around for a while. But yeah, so everybody gets 100 hours of PTO,
Okay.
or 80 vacation and 20 sick,
Okay.
and then 7 holidays plus your birthday off. I've got a 3% match IRA, a simple IRA for them, and then I pay 100% of their health insurance.
Oh, very nice. Okay. So it's quite a bit then. And I think every owner kind of comes to that realization is like the more you can pay your guys, the less turnover you have. And the less turnover you have, the higher quality everything is. The more efficient you are, the less training you have to do. So there's a lot of value in keeping people, and if keeping people means providing for them, I mean that's what you got to do, right?
Yeah, there's a fine line. You got to look at your margins and all that kind of stuff, and really decide, what it's worth. But at the same time, if you didn't have a person working for you, or you had to constantly retrain, then you're just losing money when you're retraining people.
Sure. And obviously, what you do is very niche. So,
Yep. Yeah. I hope to teach somebody one time and they stay with me for a very long time and they use that lesson, over and over and over again.
Yep. Yeah, that's in the performance side where I'm at. The problem always becomes is when you train somebody, they then immediately turn around and want to start their own business and do it themselves. And a lot of them don't realize like how much time and how little money there is at first. So when you have a decent job doing what you love, like I can assure most people that it's much harder doing it on your own. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. In fact, I just spoke to, I was dropping off a car this morning and speaking to a guy who shared the same sentiment. He's like, yeah, I have the ability to tune and do all this stuff, but I can't scale for the level of income that I want, and to it just there wasn't enough profit there for him, so he said basically he's backed down. He's not going to go that route anymore, and try and focus on scaling his business in other directions.
Sure. Do you have a formal business plan written?
Well, when you open an LLC, the state asks for articles of organization, and then I think early on I had some experience writing a business plan in college and some of my business classes, but and that's something that needs to be revised over and over again, and it's small business in my experience has just been sort of this. It can be turbulent, and something tomorrow could happen that offsets the way we operate for the next, I don't know, 2 to 3 years.
Like COVID.
And so
COVID
yeah, that thing.
Yeah. Where everybody's supplies of parts just disappears like within a week, right?
I mean, that happens, and then everything you thought you were doing or you could be doing changes, and you got to reinvent yourself. So to have a business plan is really fluid, or it's a fluid thing in my world, so I don't know that it's not really written, and sometimes it's just organic and I'm feeling it, and we're going to go this direction with what we're doing and try and grow the business here.
Okay. And I guess in addition to the formal business plan, how about like just a 1-year plan or a 5-year plan? Do you have like direction where you want to take this thing?
Yeah, the 1-year plan is get the work done that I have in front of me. That's the 1-year plan, but getting that work done does also open things up into other avenues. So like I have a couple projects that we should have done this year, and the intent is to use these projects as marketing tools
Okay.
to kind of bring some more attention towards us.
Okay.
And so that hopefully opens up other avenues, right? So that's my 1 year plan, is do the work that's in front of me, use it as a marketing tool, and then, more people will come or will be noticed for what we're doing.
Okay.
And as far as a 5 year plan goes, yeah, I've thought about. I haven't really thought about growing my restoration shop in size. Um, I like the size it's at. It fits inside the building currently, and I don't want to get any bigger than what I have. But there are other areas of the automotive industry, specifically in my area, that I think could use some help. And I've always wanted to have. I always had this vision, like, where my shop would be a main hub for people that needed car stuff done.
Okay.
So I've dabbled or thought about, an engine machine shop, or I'll say an engine machine, but also fabrication shop.
Okay.
Um, Not necessarily inside of my business, but next to, or something like that, that sort of operated independently, but could service both. We could both service each other and then the public as well.
Gotcha. Yeah. Like a sister company, essentially.
Yep.
For managing the business, what are you doing? Do you have like a shop manager, a foreman? Is it you? How do you handle that side of things?
Well, there's myself, who, I look at myself as the communicator for the client, and then I'm the ultimate problem solver. Like, every one of my employees is a problem solver at some level, but I'm the ultimate problem solver, right? But then I've also got Brad, who's my project and parts manager. So he's sort of in the shop or in the front, and just ordering parts and making sure the guys have what they need to, get the jobs done. So that's sort of the current structure of management. And then I also try to make sure the guys have, their own level of autonomy, to where they can, order parts from the local parts store if needed, and they just drive it down. Or, here's a catalog, write up a parts list and let's make sure we get it all the right stuff. I expect them to be their own expert at what they're doing, at the work they're doing. So, yeah.
Awesome. And then what are you using for software to run the business?
I use My Shop Assist and QuickBooks.
Okay.
Obviously QuickBooks for the financial side, but My Shop Assist. I don't know exactly how long I've been with you, but I think it's probably close to 10 years.
Yeah, it's been a while for sure. Yeah.
And it was in its infancy stages, I think, when I joined on, but I saw a post on Facebook from Cody Loveland.
Yeah.
He said,
he was in your area, right? Uh-huh.
Yep. He was probably 20 minutes from me. And he said, this is the first, shop program that I've used where I actually started making money. And, at that time, what I was doing was I was taking all of my employees' handwritten time cards, and then I was, trying to dictate the chicken scratch on there and then write a story in QuickBooks for the client that made sense, and then put hours to it. And so I think at the time I probably had 5 time cards a day.
Okay. So you were spending a lot of time basically interpreting what people were writing down.
Oh yeah, it was just it was terrible. But that's the old school method. I mean, there are restoration shops, there are other shops, bigger shops than mine, still out there doing that same thing every single day still. And I don't know how.
Yeah.
Because it's so much time spent to try and dictate that, produce a bill, and then, yeah.
Yeah, lots of wasted time doing it wrong, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So So with My Shop Assist, we're able to coordinate, our jobs. We're able to schedule things, plan out, what our week looks like. We can, with the parts aspect of things, we can save all of our parts and then put it into the tasks. And I mean, it's probably the best money I spend every month.
And for the QuickBooks side of things, you do QuickBooks Desktop, right?
Yeah, I use QuickBooks Desktop through my accountant.
Yeah.
She's got a kind of a server set up, and so we can get My Shop Assist and QuickBooks to still communicate.
Yeah.
So she can do her, tax stuff and all that kind of things that she's comfortable with, and we can have the ability to organize things.
And do you? So you have an accountant, which is I've never really asked any shops this, but I think it's super important information, and I've kind of like been working on this whole problem myself. But anyway, you're using her as an accountant. Do you also use her for bookkeeping, or do you do that yourself?
Yeah, well, I do the billing, invoicing, the bill paying, payroll.
Okay.
But she does the reconciling, all the state forms,
okay,
taxes. Yeah, she does. She'll file like the payroll taxes and all that kind of stuff. So, and that's great. That's stuff that I don't want to deal with, but I like to have my finger on the numbers, and I like to feel where the money's going.
Yeah.
So, to have that, to know, okay, yeah, I got this bill to pay and it's 15 grand, like where's it coming from and what's it going to look like after it's gone. Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you always hear about those horror stories of like an accountant embezzling money from a business, right? And you're like, how do they not know how much money they had, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's like the business owner never even checked the bank account.
Yeah.
And it's just wild to me that, and I mean, there have been times where I sort of got lax about it, and then I kind of got caught, and I was like, "Oh, okay, well, I should have been thinking about this." And I guess I gotta try to pull a line of credit, or there was a point in time where I could call up my dad, and he'd throw me a little loan, but he's since passed away, and the loans were getting way too big for him, even so. So yeah.
So you find value in having an accountant, and especially one that understands your business, right? And then you, as an owner, are actively involved in what they are doing without actually like filing the paperwork, right?
Yeah, I mean, she does all the paperwork, and then she gets it to me to sign, and she'll do all the e-filings if she has to, and so I still control, or I can still see where the money's going at what time.
Okay.
And that to me is really important on, feeling the pulse of your business.
Okay. And then you're up in Michigan. For people who are not in this country, who know where Traverse City is, it's on the kind of the northern edge of the southern peninsula of Michigan. And does that play a role in, your success? Or, I mean, you said you're kind of like the only one in that area, but I would imagine you draw stuff from all over the country. Is that not the case?
Yeah, I mean, I've drawn projects from Colorado and New Jersey, and Ohio. So those were the outliers.
Okay.
But a lot of it's from northern Michigan or even southern Michigan down closer to Detroit. But our name's getting bigger and bigger to the point where, yeah, I would say the lower peninsula of Michigan, we're getting some attention. But I got a couple clients that have been from the UP as well.
Okay.
So, but I would say, I don't know if Traverse City has played a role in my success, other than there's a lot of retirees here.
They love their old cars, right?
They love their toys. You work your whole life, you put in the work, you put in the time, and then you get to retire and you move to a beautiful place like Traverse City, where we've got, crystal blue, clear water,
Yep.
and, nice, clean, small beaches, but nice, clean beaches.
Excellent fishing.
And excellent fishing and outdoors stuff to do and boating. You retire up here and, you want to have some toys. You want to have a car, you want to have a boat, whatever it is, people move here. And so, what I developed as a business was kind of a one-stop shop where you could have, all kinds of work done, body work, upholstery work, and mechanical work, under one roof. And there are other people in the region that do one component of my business, but nobody that I'm aware of that does all of it.
Okay. So what's the worst experience you've had in business?
Well, I think every business owner has their roller coaster ride, and that there's some moments where you have that pit in your stomach. There's been a lot of stress, a lot of sleepless nights. Those are bad. But one moment that comes to mind is a client was upset with how long his project was taking, and he threatened to sue us. And but I was able to basically, because of my shop assist and our level of documentation, where we had dates and times and, correspondence of what happened when, I was basically able to, say, look, I've done everything you told me to do, and I haven't done anything wrong, Mm-hmm. Later, I found out that he went to the doctor and he got a bad diagnosis. And so his reaction was to take it out on me.
Okay.
And, I just hated that. I hated that whole experience. Number one is I felt like I was trying to do the things he asked me to do. And then, obviously it wasn't going as quickly as he wanted. So I take things personally. Yep. When, people are upset. And then, then come to find out that he's sick and he's got limited time on the earth, and it's like, this is just awful.
Right. Now you feel like you need to get it done faster, right? It's not just wanting to.
I have to get it done
it's
faster, cheaper, and, if not free, kind of, it's just, and it's not like, it wasn't a situation where I antagonized, it to get to that point of a legal battle. But we didn't even use lawyers. I wrote him a nice letter, laid everything out, and then I think his lawyer told him to just, you got nothing. Yeah. So, okay. But it was just, that was probably the most in your face, worst moment that I can think of. Other than, sleepless nights and dealing with all the, accidents that may happen or occur, and, fix this and do that. And, but that's, you sort of just roll with the punches. But I had one client tell me that, if he had the problems, of 5 years ago, then everything would be easy. So right. It's like, as you grow in business, everything gets bigger and things get harder. Yeah. And if I only had to figure out a payroll of, $5,000, that wouldn't be bad anymore. But now it's way more than that. Right. So
yeah, you can't just come in on a Saturday and make it up.
Yeah, the business has grown beyond me. Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize when they get to a certain level, is like, you can't just make it up by yourself. You need those people there.
Yeah. So what's something you're doing right now that has you pumped up?
Well, I kind of mentioned earlier, we're getting a few cars done this year. So one is a 1969 Dodge Charger. We've had it in the shop for quite a while. It's been through 2 owners. But it's finally come to fruition. I've literally got to put the last part on tomorrow, take pictures, and my hope is that we can apply to Autorama, get accepted Autorama is in Detroit, where they present the Riddler Award to the top 8 custom car builds.
Okay.
We won't be in that top 8, but it's another venue where you're sort of you're in a big hall with a whole bunch of other cars. There's lots of eyes on you, so that I'm really looking forward to here, and that will be at the end of February if we do get accepted to show the car.
Okay.
Um,
Are you allowed to say what kind of car it is?
It's a 1969 Dodge Charger.
Okay.
It's got a 440 supercharged. It's probably somewhere between 700 and 800 horse. It's got a Tremec T56 6-speed manual transmission. From the outside, it looks like a sleeper, but underneath, it's probably the scariest car I've ever driven.
Let's go into depth on managing these projects. And most of what you do is restoration stuff, like older cars, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And,
all we do is classic cars. Yeah.
And about how many hours does a typical build take?
If we're talking about a full restoration, I haven't seen anything less than 2,000 hours. And any more, they're probably, between 2,500 and 3,500.
Okay. So, and for people who aren't like aware of that, 1 man year, so one person working full time for an entire year is 2,000 hours.
Yeah.
So based off that, if you got 10 guys, you can do at most 10 cars in a year, full on restorations in, huh?
Right, but we don't.
Yeah, there's a lot of other time goes all over the place. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So and the skills to do all this are unique. How are you finding people that can do the work you need?
Well, finding the skill sets, every employer I think wants this plug and play. Like I just hire a guy and he automatically knows how to do CAD and he knows how to weld aluminum or use a planishing hammer or power hammer or rebuild an engine. And we don't have that so much anymore. And I think it's because a lot of younger people don't get that kind of exposure until, much later in life. So what I really try to focus on is the aptitude of the individual, somebody who can think, can envision, see things coming, and just more or less use their brain. The skills will come if they're inquisitive enough and they can ask enough questions. I'm more than willing to share and teach and all that kind of stuff, but they have to at least come with an inquisitive nature.
Okay.
And a willingness to learn and think, because with some mechanical aptitude, right?
Sure.
So yeah, that's mostly what I look for anymore, because none of the cars that we see are the same.
Yeah.
You could line up one Mustang to the next Mustang, and they, they're different. Whether they've been through 40 different mechanics before in their life. And so you have to sort of reverse engineer some things to, figure it out.
Okay. And how do you come to a shop rate that, is profitable, but also, when you're spending 2,000 hours on a car, even at just like $100 an hour, that's still a lot of money, right? So how do you come to a shop rate that works for you and your customers aren't complaining?
Well, I haven't really had any customers complain. Well, not directly to me.
Behind the back, they're all like, God damn, this is expensive, right?
Yeah, I'm sure, nobody likes to. I've had some, one client say, yep, we'll take all these invoices when the car's done and we'll just burn them. So, there is some of that sense where, yeah, it's expensive, but it also costs a lot to operate. And my thought process is, I want to be fair. I want to make a living. If I am going broke trying to use my skill sets, then I'm really not being fair to myself either.
Yeah.
So, the shop rate is something where I got to weigh my costs every year and look at, what I'm paying my employees and benefits, and then any other, operational costs that come up. And yeah, we adjust
Okay.
almost every single year. Although I don't really like to, but
Yeah. Yeah, it's necessary.
it's either every year or every other year.
Sure. Well, if you want to pay your guys more, it's got to come from somewhere. And if you're not charging more for the cars, then it's eventually going to cap out. You won't be able to have any more money to give them.
Yeah, yeah, and then what's the point in being in business if you're just working for free,
Right?
or you can't go home because you have to work 20 hours out of a 24-hour day.
Yeah. Okay.
Just to keep up.
So let's talk about the systems you have in place to like manage these projects. So obviously we have the software side of things, but like as far as like actually building a car, do you have like a process for like when it comes in? Are you like documenting it and then tearing it down, and kind of walk us through how you handle these builds?
Yeah, the documentation part is like that's the first step. I call it documentation and inventory, and it's sort of part of the disassembly process, because a technician will walk around the car and they'll photograph, probably 20 different angles on the exterior of the car, but then they might see some unique features and zoom in on that. And then we go under the hood, we go under the chassis, we get into the interiors, and you have to take pictures of every single corner and crevice. And usually it's a shot that's far away, and then you work in a little closer, and then maybe a little closer, so that you can highlight a certain detail of how a car is put together. And then you continue to do that as you disassemble the vehicle. So we will have a completely disassembled vehicle, and anywhere from 600 to 1,000 photos of the car being disassembled. And then each part will be bagged and tagged, cataloged. If it needs any kind of chrome or plating, we try to put those aside to ship out. All the interior goes into the upholstery shop, and so all that will get handled at one point in time. And then once the body is completely stripped, that goes out to media blast, and then we get back what we have left.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you start the rebuild process.
And then we start, rebuilding the engines and drivetrain, and doing all the body work, and ordering materials for an interior and different things like that.
It's crazy. There's so much to it that like until you actually start doing a bunch of them, you're just kind of wing it. I'm sure everybody just wings it until they really have a plan. And it sounds like you have quite the plan and system in place to handle these.
Yeah, I think the winging aspect is, you definitely do that and it's okay to do that if you're the only one doing it. So if you know that you're going to be the one that's taking the car apart, doing all the repairs, and then putting it back together, that's one thing. But when you have employees, and you hope your employees are going to stick around long enough to see a project through,
Mm-hmm.
right? But we're talking about a project that takes about 2 years.
Okay.
So if there's any kind of, if an employee is there and then they leave, but they took it apart, sometimes you get some creative photos and different notes that you got to try and dissect and figure out. So that's why I say you can never have enough photos. You can never have enough notes. It really takes a lot of effort. So I normally try to get involved with that disassembly process and inventory process so that we can build all of that out. And, between myself and my shop manager, who I hope isn't going anywhere soon, we've got sort of a lot of the information in front of us.
Okay. Yeah. And like, how are you selling these projects? So are people coming to you, or, do you have to like give them a ballpark? I'm sure you get tire kickers that like, what's it cost to restore my car? And you throw out a number that's 6 figures and they're like, oh, whoa, not too much, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, most people come to me when they want work done. And full restorations rarely happen. Most of the work that we do is partial. So, I need a dent fixed on this car, or I need a new interior, or my engine's, it's got no more oil pressure, so we got to rebuild the engine.
Mm-hmm.
And then even down to simple maintenance items, brakes and, oil changes and things like that. A carburetor tune-up, an ignition tune-up, carburetor tuning, different things like that. We do all of that as well. So, people come to us for a lot of different things, but then to like sell the big job, it's I have to be transparent. I've got to be honest with them and say, hey, you're looking at about this many hours. It's going to be about this much money, and I try to give them big scary numbers and say, you know, this is on average. This is what we're seeing. But then there's lots of variables too,
Yeah.
and I try to go back to, if you've ever talked to somebody who's restored an old house, and they start peeling the walls down in the old house and they find, one thing after another, and, all of a sudden the project has escalated to double what it was initially.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very real possibility with what we do.
When you're working on these large projects, how are you taking payments on this? So my understanding is basically most restoration shops do what's called progress billing. And I honestly, I think I learned most of that from you, how you do the payments, but kind of explain that to us and tell us how it works.
Yeah, well, I started off doing monthly billing, and then quickly figured out that monthly wasn't fast enough to meet up with my cash flow for growth. And then I did like every 2 weeks. And now it's just sort of to the point where I feel like I bill every week. If we worked on your car and it was, $1,000 or more worth of work, then I'm going to bill you.
Okay.
And that to me it's a manageable number for most people. Anything less than $5,000 to my clients seems to be a manageable number to read, to dissect how much time it took, what we did, all the notes involved, all the parts involved. But then once you start getting like into, five figures, like 10 grand and above, that's when a lot of clients might question, what'd you do? And what about this? And why is that happen? And I never want them to question my honesty or integrity, because, with my shop assist, it's made it so easy for me to say, we billed 5.63 hours on this task.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. I'm not making up numbers. I didn't round it off to the nearest 10 hours, and your bill doesn't say restore car,
Right.
$10,000.
Yeah.
It needs to be very detailed and needs to be transparent. But the weekly billing is such that if a client had a question, they could ask me, and I could say, yeah, this is what we did Monday, and then this was Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, and just go right through it and be able to verbally explain what we did. And then if they wanted to come in, it's easy for my technician or myself to show them what happened.
Sure.
At the photos that we put in there supplement that as well.
Okay.
I think everybody likes getting the photos, and we give them a USB flash drive at the end. But communication is just, it's huge.
Okay.
And
that was actually my next question is what do you do to communicate with the customer and keep them excited about their project when it takes 2 years?
Well, a lot of it's, through MSA. I would say, most of it is sending updates or the invoices with photos so they can see it, but they can, with the photos, they can visually see progress. I would gladly, have clients come in once in a while and talk with the technician and see what's going on. Because my technicians like to show off a little bit too. They like to say, hey, check this out. This is the way it was. And then I fixed it and I did this and that. And they're like, oh, wow, really? Holy smokes,
Yeah.
And the clients have had no idea what it took. So it's nice when they do come in and they get to talk with the technicians. Although, I also don't want my technicians standing around all day too. So,
Okay. Yeah.
so I continue to fall back on the notes. Keeping clients excited is it's definitely hard when you're talking about 2 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And so it sounds like basically the documentation part of it handles most of the customer community. If you're doing good with the documentation, it handles liability, it handles the customers, it kind of does all of it. It's just absolutely key to most of what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so what about when you do have a problem that you didn't expect? Like, I mean, you probably see everything. So what's like a good example of like a big problem that you didn't foresee, that you gotta kind of, how do you explain that to your customer and how do they handle that?
Well, when you say it's a problem, I used to say, "Oh, this is a bad problem." This car, we just got it back from the sandblaster, and it was a running and driving car, and then we disassembled it and got it back from the sandblaster, and now there isn't even a floor in there. It's just like Swiss cheese.
Okay.
So that to me, it's a problem only if they want to take it as bad news.
Okay.
So I've sort of changed my words a little bit to say, well, I got to give you some news.
Okay.
And you get to decide if it's good news or bad news. But this is the work that we have in front of us, right?
Yep.
So, your poor car doesn't have a floor left because it turned out it was all street signs and beer boxes. Somebody got creative, and that's cool, but we're not going to get creative here and fix your car that way. So, we're going to make a new floor for it. And we had a Willys Jeepster that was like that. It was a beautiful original running driving car, and then it came back and it was like, I don't think we can even put this on a rotisserie. It was that flimsy. But the clients loved it. It was the car that she learned to drive in. It was the family cottage car. So of course, you have to. It's a family member at that point, and you had to restore it. So, we see that vehicle. I mean, it's been 7 or 8 years since we restored that car, and we see that probably once every few years, and they're ecstatic about it. They love that car.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Okay, and that falls into my next question. Perfect. Is when you do finish a job, how are you following up with the project? Do people send them back to you for maintenance, or are you making sure everything's working good for them? Like, how do you handle that?
Yeah, I try to do some check-ins. I'll do on an informal basis. I do a cars and coffee at my shop twice a year, where I hope that they'll show up with their car, and at least then I can say, hey, yeah, how's it doing? How's it going? Looks great, all that kind of stuff. And or maybe I'll send a card. But I think most of my clients aren't strangers, and we do have a friendly bond when they get their car back. So it's a direct call to my cell phone or whatever, just to if they have any problems, I'm there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. If they get stuck on the side of the road, I'm coming with my truck and trailer. I'm trying to help them fix it. So
okay.
So yeah.
And the projects you have, obviously, when you have them for a long time, they obviously then take up a lot of space.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find it difficult managing how many jobs you can house at a time?
Yeah. Like I said earlier, I can, comfortably it's 12, but if I really need to, it's 18. And at 18, it's just, bumper to bumper inside the shop with guys working, and then also all of our equipment. But there's an ebb and flow to this job shop business that is somewhat unpredictable. And I exaggerate this, but I can, a car will come in, 2 cars will come in on the same day, one for a restoration and one for an oil change. And I swear they leave at the exact same day. It's just because the oil change, we find out, well, you need more than what was anticipated. And so we give them an estimate, and then they go, yeah, let's do it. and so I always struggle with predicting when a car is going to leave, because it's not a straightforward, it's not a brake job, and the car has been worked on like 40 times probably or more, and you never know really what you're getting into, but you can assume a couple of things. So um, yeah, they do take some time, and I mean, it's lucky for me I have that extra space available
Sure.
that I can make it work.
Okay, so do you plan when you take new cars in for big projects based off when you finish other ones? Is that how it works, or you just kind of take them as they come and make room for them?
Yeah, we can't do that. Definitely can't take them in whenever they show up, because we would be overloaded with big projects. I try to. At one point, I was scheduling 4 big projects a year, um, and I've since knocked it down to like 2 or 3 per year, just because of uh, some of that ebb and flow difficulty, and we're sort of tight on some big projects right now. So I want to sort of give ourselves a little bit of breathing room. I feel like if you can breathe and you can see the work that's in front of you, you can get it done a lot more efficiently. So I am trying to make an adjustment there in my previous business practices to now, and try to get the projects to a point where they're just, I have 2 big projects in front of me, and we know when they're going to be done because we've got a solid crew on them, and we can manage that timeline for the big projects, and then we can fill in with small work around that.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay. And what's something that you struggle with in business, and how do you deal with that? Like, this could be like the bookkeeping, managing people. What do you struggle with?
Managing people has always been a challenge, but honestly, it's managing myself and my personal time management. Um, I tend to think I'm a hero some days, and I can do way more than what's capable in a normal workday. so, so I kind of get myself into some jams, where I've taken on too much work for myself that only I can do. So I would say that's my biggest problem. Um, and the second biggest problem is just keeping your employees motivated and happy, and keeping them agile, on their toes, ready to work, ready to solve problems. I mean, that's a daily, weekly type occurrence where you got to keep people motivated.
Sure, sure. All right. And what's the most successful method you're using to promote your business? I mean, it sounds like building the cars is what you do, but do you do any advertising or trade shows, anything like that?
We haven't really done any sort of advertising other than small stuff here and there. Most of it's just word of mouth.
Okay.
And there's inevitably, at least once a month throughout the year, somebody happens upon us, and then they go, "I never knew you were here," and I'm like, "Well, here we are." It's, but being in business for 13 years, I'm always meeting new people, and we have such a big demand that I could advertise, but then I'd just be asking for more work that I can't really fulfill in a timely manner. So right now we're booked out until August for service work, and that's just taking in 1 to 2 new cars every week.
Okay.
And then of course we've got our big restoration stuff on top of that. So, just this year we will probably work on 75 to 100 cars.
Okay. So it's essentially one every 2 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's pretty big rotation, and I that service aspect of the business, I tend to think of it, more like a service and repair shop. So, that's how I get that scheduling, and I just kind of book 1 new car every week, and then but then we'll be able to fill in with the gaps here and there.
Okay. And then we like to take action on Do It for a Living. Can you suggest an action item that our listeners can take away to improve their situation?
I had to remind myself is I may be self-employed, but everybody on this earth is self-employed. And we've all got our own ability to control our destiny and who we work for and what we do. And so I'm talking to anybody who's an employee. You got to go to work thinking, well, you made your choice to get out of bed and go to this job. And then if you're self-employed and you don't like your situation, you got to change it. You got to dig in deep and find the passion and find that room to grow to where you're going to be happy. And everybody thinks sitting on an island, drinking some nice cocktails is the dream, but I can tell you, I mean, I don't do it a lot, but that's not my dream. That's sitting still on a beach is not my dream. So I like working. I like doing what I do. I like producing something. Eventually someday, yeah, I'll get a beach vacation or something like that. But, I think we all just need to go about every day, thinking as if we are self-employed. You have the opportunity to grow and do whatever you want, and make your destiny.
And you're just spoiled because you're on Lake Michigan there, and the beaches are some of the best in the world.
Oh yeah, I just bike to them. It's fine.
Yeah. So I grew up right next to it as well, and like I go to the beaches in Texas here on the ocean. I'm like, these are not nice beaches at all. They're kind of crappy. But anyway, so okay, so let's go to the quick answer questions here. Tell us a game-changing product you've seen in the last year.
I don't know if there's a product that's new that I've seen, but one of the things that I've used is a 3D scanner and 3D printer.
Okay.
So at least on a consumer level, 3D scanner is very obtainable. I purchased an Einstar 3D scanner, and for one of our projects, I was able to scan a dash and then take that CAD data and get it to a designer who could then do some more modifications and fitment things. And then, the 3D printer, just having my bamboo printer, there in the office has been great, because a guy comes up and he goes, yeah, I got this problem and I need this bracket. And one guy brought in literally stacks of plywood, shaped and, carved. And then we were like, okay, we have to make a bracket for a serpentine belt out of this, we were able to mock up, and design and 3D print something. And then we had it machined. So that's not really those technologies aren't new to industry, but they are new on a consumer level. And I would consider, my shop, to where I'll say a small investment is in a really good tool is about $1,000. A little bit bigger investment would be about $5,000. And then you start looking at, big equipment at 10,000 plus, right?
Yeah.
So for $1,000 for each piece of equipment, you can do some really handy things, develop from there.
Yeah. I mean, when you're custom fabbing everything, I'd imagine those are absolutely essential now. So, yeah.
Yep.
Do you have a favorite app you use on your phone daily? This could be anything, even Facebook or Gmail or whatever it may be.
I'm on Facebook too much.
You and I both. Yeah. You and I both.
It's bad. I could probably be doing something better than being on that.
What's your favorite shop tool?
I mean, the 3D scanner and the 3D printer are pretty cool. I bought a power hammer about a year ago, and that's been pretty unique to use, because it takes the place of, as far as a custom fab shop goes, it would take the place of your English wheel, planishing hammer, and bead roller in most cases.
Okay.
And even a brake or a shear, brake and shear, you could probably use it for those things too. So it's got a lot of versatility in sheet metal fab. It's been cool to use and think of different ways that we could, adapt it into our body panel fabrication.
So when you're forming the metal yourself, you can use that.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, that's something I think is really amazing that people are able to do that and never learned how. But I mean, I know the tools, or at least aware of the tools, but that's an art right there. That's definitely an art.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you daily driving?
The daily driver is basically the work truck, a Ford F-250, 2019 F-250. But I use that for hauling customer cars and hauling the race car to the track. But summertime, that's when I bust out some of the fun things. I've got a 66 Mustang that was my grandfather's new. I've got an 87 Mercor XR4 Ti. And I've got a 49 MG Y-Type that was pretty rare. So, yeah, those are my other ones.
Okay. And what do you feel the future of automotive restoration is going to be?
The restoration industry, sort of grew rapidly from the 80s, I would say, and to the point where we had a lot of knowledge base in big shops, lots of technicians out there that could, hand make lots of things. That's since dwindled. I think shop size and even the amount of shops that we have available have dwindled. Or some of those shops have gone really niche level, or they only focus on a certain mark, say like Jaguar or Mercedes or something like that.
Sure.
But as those people, retire or die or whatever, I think there's probably going to be a little bit of a resurgence to finding a place that can take care of it all. So that's why I've structured my business the way I have, in doing all three things in one spot, and then potentially growing to more. We have less and less availability of skilled laborers out there.
Yeah.
And the client has a harder and harder time finding those qualified people to do the work as well. It's a lot of it, you got to know a guy to know a guy. So, my idea and my hope is that I can build a business that has so many facets, and you can work and communicate from one technician to the next, or one skill set to the next, that you can deliver the client the desired product at a very high level still. So I think we might go back to big shops, but few of them, as opposed to several very small shops.
Okay. Yeah. And it's like I've met a lot of restoration guys, and just seeing your operation is definitely one of the better ones I've seen. In fact, probably one of the best that I have seen.
Thank you.
Learning how people do this has been quite fun for me. It's kind of like hearing exactly how you do it and how you manage it all and how you run the business. So I want to thank you for taking the time to share your story.
Sure. Absolutely, Kevin. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. And so before we close out here, how do we if people want to get in contact with you, or how do they connect with you and your company?
Sure. Well, you can find us on Facebook, Hammer and Dolly Automotive Restorations. Or our website is www.hammeranddolly.com. And we've got a contact form on the website. You could shoot me a little inquiry, and I can get back to them. Or and then our phone number is on the website too. So reach out. And if you ever see me at a show or something like that, feel free to track me down.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again for taking the time to talk to us.
You bet, Kevin. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast app, tap the subscribe button. When you subscribe, you help us gain momentum and attract more high-level guests. Thanks for listening, and good luck.